I'm here at Mojang Studios to tell you more about game drops. We know you want Minecraft content more frequently. These game drops will come in varying sizes.
But just how much will the size of those game drops vary? Well, we have an interesting look into the Creaking drop because now we know some parts of this update are locked in for good, and we'll talk about exactly what things those are because interestingly enough, it includes not a feature that was listed on the latest changelog for it. Minecraft developers have now confirmed that it's working as intended, with the Wandering Traders missing a very crucial component, but we'll talk about those and answer your questions about that right after we go into this one from 2 years ago, because hello, I'm AviXToyCat, this is Q&A Saturday, and I think it's fair we start with the oldest question first, because 2 years ago someone asked me how to use jigsaw blocks, and at the time the answer was you can't really on Bedrock, but now there is a brand new toggle inside of the preview, and so therefore inside of 1.20, 1.50, you'll be able to activate data-driven structures, and if you choose to do that, you'll be able to access the jigsaw, except it's not found in the creative inventory. As you can see, you're still going to have to type at yourself, give at self, and then jigsaw block, and if you do that, you'll be able to place these down, and then, oh, there's a bunch of weird boxes. So, ignoring the fact that these are exactly how it works on Java, there is no generate button, and so you can't actually use jigsaw blocks right now. Instead, if we take a closer look at the changelog, they've just changed it so you can now alter certain JSON files for existing structure generation. In reality, most people aren't doing that unless you're deep into the creator world for maps, and so right now, the jigsaw is mostly a pretty aesthetic block, something you can confirm with this bug report. Speaking of bug reports, that's going to be a very interesting source later, but in the meantime, let me show you something fun you might have missed if you didn't catch Wednesday's video, and that is the fact that there is a brand new panorama, something that has previously only been done for major updates for Minecraft Java Edition. And basically the same for Bedrock if you exclude the Halloween panorama they did for a couple of years. And so this is a very relevant thing because of the fact that lots of people, including EC342MC, have been saying the thing this biome needs more than anything else is a spooky, thick fog. Indeed, the Pale Garden is meant to be a spooky biome, so it needs a spooky fog, but I have some bad news for you if that's what you're hoping for, because if we come back to these credits with this brand new panorama, I think it's important to note that we've never seen a panorama for a non-major update, so clearly Minecraft considered there to be different sizes, but also we've never seen a panorama change during the development of one. And so if you look at this panorama, that is the exact same one you'll be seeing in 3 to 6 weeks when the drop arrives both Java and Bedrock, and that means therefore that this is what it will look like, and presuming they don't want it to not match the game, then it's very unlikely they're going to be adding fog. That seems pretty locked in, and it's also true that the tree is not going to be changing to be more like a willow tree, but instead it's going to remain a variant of the dark oak. And in a similar vein, we know about a feature which was meant to be in this update, but which actually isn't. So here is the changelog for the snapshot, which came out this week. They added the resin clump, the block of resin, resin brick, and a family of resin brick blocks, all of which were available in the Bedrock preview, so you saw my video on that last week probably. However, the Wandering Trader can sell resin clumps is one of the items listed in here. However, despite the murder of lots of Wandering Traders, who by the way, totally deserved what happened to them, it's worth mentioning that I didn't find a single example of this new trade on the Java edition, and neither could I find it on the Bedrock version. I thought this was maybe me being unlucky, or them waiting the trade to be very unlikely. However, everyone else that I've seen has reported this same issue, and there was even a Minecraft bug tracker report for this, and that is really interesting because they actually resolved this, and they said works as intended. It is officially confirmed that you can't get a resin clump from a Wandering Trader, but that is actually how the game is meant to work, which means they wrote a feature on the changelog which is not in the snapshot or preview, and which is not in the main game, and therefore you can't get all of the features from this new biome without going there, because resin is only obtainable from farming or heavily petting the Creaking in a repeated manner in his own home biome. This is very interesting, and to some people, by the way, it was also interesting that the Wandering Trader was selling compressed ice in my video. This is an artifact of British English on the Java edition. Don't ask me why packed ice is not a thing in the UK. I've never heard of that concept. But you know what else I've never heard of? Official Depanda saying, Toycat, this is called a drop, not an update. The way they work is old news. Calling this an update will confuse some people as the majority calls it a drop. And this is actually not true. A lot of people are referring to these new drops as updates, something Minecraft themselves tried to put right, which is why Vu Bui had this segment in the latest Minecraft Monthly.
That's because we're changing the way we release updates. Let's hear our reporter, Vu Bui, explain even more. Thanks, Vu. I'm here at Mojang Studios to tell you more about game drops. We know you want Minecraft content more frequently, so we're changing it up. So instead of one update per year, we're bringing you multiple free game drops per year.
Interesting that he decided to clarify that they are free game drops again, by the way, but just after this he clarifies something even more interesting, which Minecraft haven't officially said till just now.
These game drops will come in varying sizes.
That is interesting because although it's been a given if you've been following the drop cycle so far, the first one was literally a new bat model and pots, the second one was quite substantial, and then the third one was just bundles if you're a Java player. There is a really big size difference between each of the drops so far, and so if they're going to be calling the winter drop or the creaking canopies a drop, that is going to be the biggest drop size yet. Even more impressively, it'll be a pretty big drop that looks like it's been developed mostly in the span of about 2 months so far, and so I'll let VooBuoy continue.
And will allow you to explore features more frequently. So instead of one update per year, you'll get multiple game drops per year.
So on the surface, this seems like it was just a way to dumb down the Future of Minecraft post they made a few weeks ago. It is also very interesting because it kind of reiterates the balance that we've been sort of seeing with Bundles of Bravery being a bit smaller, and then with the winter drop being bigger, and then with clearly another drop coming in the early months of next year. Then if we expect to see Minecraft live in April, which is the best guess we have so far because it's 6 months after the last one, then perhaps that's when they'll announce the next bigger game drop, which, to Verse 1.0's credit, who says, I think getting rid of traditional updates and replacing them is completely detrimental. Drops have been extremely confusing in terms of what versions and what the drops are. I think this is sort of the plan, right? The Minecraft community had latched onto for so long that every big version number, i.e. 1.20, 1.21, had to be a huge game-changing update on the scale of the never update or on the scale of the update that changed the world, and that presented the developers with a problem because what if they wanted to work on a feature but not all the way to the scale of a grand update? Well, if they called it 1.23, then people would say, no, this isn't a major update, I feel betrayed, whereas the new drop system is sort of almost confusing on purpose. Is a drop the size of bats and pots, or is a drop the size of the winter drop? That is something you don't sort of really know until it's come out, and it means that you can judge an update, or rather a drop, based on the content in it, rather than anything else. Speaking of judging based on the content, I would like to issue a correction to my Future of Minecraft video I uploaded this week. In it, I referenced how there's 5 people you could argue are the head of Mojang, depending on which direction you go, and one of those people was the Mojang CEO. And if you Google who is the Mojang CEO, he will officially come up, and it's very odd that a private company inside of another company has a CEO. And so interestingly, if you go to his specific LinkedIn, you'll see that he doesn't actually seemingly work as the CEO anymore, and he actually is now an executive strategy advisor, which has been since September 2021. And if you try to find out who the new CEO is, you won't find anything, because after he stood down, Mojang elected not to fill the post, and so as a result, there is no CEO of Mojang, something which some people think is ridiculous, like Anal Vagoel, who says Mojang doesn't have a CEO for 3 years, deadface, as if that's the problem with every responsibility there. However, I think in reality, Mojang not having a CEO is not necessarily a bad thing. They're not a publicly traded company, so they don't need a CEO. It was kind of ridiculous that they had one in the first place, and so I would say this is just kind of addressing that. Speaking of addressing that, we have this comment from a Business Bear 99 Classic, good name by the way, who says, is anyone else really sad about Lydia leaving? It's always been a dream of mine to work at Mojang, and one of the things I wanted to do was meet her, Agnes, and Jeb. And I do think it's sad, but I also think, as I sort of mentioned in that video, that staff turnover at companies is normal, right? You can only work so many years in your life, and the norm seems to be nowadays that you switch between lots of different companies for all sorts of fun reasons relating to pay and whatnot. And so, honestly, isn't it surprising that after 15 years of being around, with Minecraft at the very least, isn't it crazy that after all of those years, there are still some people who have been there since nearly the beginning? Even, Jeb is obviously the easiest example of that. Dinnerbone's been there since the first couple of years, and even though Agnes is relatively new, in the last, 6 years, the fact that she's staying with the company and seems to be advancing and is now the vanilla game director, I love to see these improvements happen. I love to see the people that we know and love are still existing at the company. This is me maybe trying too hard to be an optimist about it, but I think that whenever you hear something like this that seems kind of bad on the surface, it's kind of a reminder of the fact that it hasn't happened elsewhere. I think we have a big negativity bias as a species, and so we hear that something bad is happening, but we'll rarely talk about the good alternative, when the thing has been fixed, or if the thing isn't bad everywhere else, the person has fine day, or person isn't hit by train is not a very exciting news story, but it's happening every single day, and I personally think it's great, but in the case of Lydia, it's a bummer, and I think that in the case of Mojang leadership in general, I hope that things are settling down, and hopefully for the best. I haven't heard from enough Mojang employees to know for sure if they like the new game drop system more or less than before, but if we get a system where the developers feel happier actually making the new things, and Mojang is getting more content out there, and crucially they're hitting all the targets they're looking for in terms of sales and whatnot, I think that you can do relatively reasonable things in terms of moving around and achieve very outsized outcomes, and I hope that's what the new game drop system achieves, because even though a part of me is bummed that like, the trees are really gonna stay like that, that's just how they're gonna be, another part of me says, yeah, well, in reality, in just 2 months getting all of this out there, what if this was the standard size of the game drop, and me being cynical and saying, oh, actually, they're gonna go like big, small game drops. Maybe that's wrong, and the game drop or update we'll be getting in March will be the size of the one that's happening here. It's hard to say for sure, but all I do know is that the winter drop is gonna be a lot of fun to play around with. There's a surprising amount of new blocks and a surprising incentive to actually go out and really mess with a Creaking or even farm a Creaking, and that's what I'm really looking forward to after this update comes out for real. Because right now, we're still talking about beta snapshots and previews, and in just a few weeks, we'll be able to talk about when it's actually coming out. Speaking of when it's actually coming out, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. By the way, just before the end of the video, I'd like to quickly point out that I am actually hiring right now. If you're someone who follows updates very closely, and you're someone who thinks that, you love to follow all the little details, and you think you know what's interesting and what's not, and you think you'd like to build a world that we can use to showcase those snapshots and previews in the videos, please do send an email to toycatassistant@gmail.com with something you've built before or why you think you should be hired for this. It's something I'd really like to add to the videos, and if you would like that, then please let me know. Otherwise, have a happy Halloween a couple of days ago. Goodbye.